and welcome to a Now for Something Completely Machinima podcast. Machinima is a form of filmmaking where you create 3D animated films inside of a video game or a real-time engine. This is episode 59, and in this episode we'll be reviewing machinima films we find interesting, and the theme this month is Second Life. The original metaverse started way back in 2003 and still going strong. I'd like to introduce my fellow podcasters, Damien Valentine.
Hello there.
Hi, Damien. Phil Rice.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And Tracy Harwood.
Hi, how you doing, everyone?
Good. It's so good to be with you all today. I sure enjoy these sessions where we talk about films.
Me too.
Phil, I wanted to ask you, there was a little news item that you wanted to share with us, and since you weren't here last time, could you tell us about it? Are you prepared to do that?
Yeah, as soon as I can remember what that was.
It was a capture. It was a...
yes. So yeah, there's some kind of, the tool is called Plask, P-L-A-S-K, and it is basically it's an endeavor toward a motion capture tool through just regular webcam like camera footage, which we've seen people play with that before to varying degrees of success. This one at least lets you get started with it for free, probably because they're still doing testing on it. I have not got to play with it yet. I intended to, but just ran out of time. But it's at the website Plask.ai. And they describe it as AI motion capture and 3D animation tool. And the demo videos look pretty impressive. They'll show someone.
I watched the demos and I thought they were pretty good.
Yeah. So I don't know how much. I think one of the perks is that the AI is supposed to be helping with, typically when you do motion capture, there's cleanup. There inevitably is cleanup to smooth things out and all that. And this supposedly smooths some of those rough edges automatically. So I'll tell you what, let's put it to the listeners. If anyone out there gives it a try, Evan Ryan, I'm talking to you. Let us know how it goes, and we'll feature your comments here on the next episode.
And if you record something and send us the audio, we'll include that.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Since our theme is Second Life, I thought it might be fun to talk a little bit about it first before we launch right into the films. Here's my first question. Every game engine used to create machinima uses the visual world, the characters, and the stories of that game. But Second Life doesn't have any specific goals. It's a landscape that consists entirely of user-generated content. Everything you see has been built by someone else. So what's unique about a Second Life machinima, since it isn't a narrative game like Half-Life 2 or Red Dead Redemption? Where do filmmakers find stories and characters to depict in their films?
Well, it seems like from ones that I've seen over the years that one of the sources of inspiration is experiences that they've had in Second Life at playing as their avatars, and not necessarily even role-playing experiences, but just real interactions or things that they've built together or that kind of thing. So they end up drawing inspiration from that. That's a trend that I've seen in some films.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, actually, because I think part of the attraction of it has to be this the kind of rich aesthetic of the sort of the 3D virtual space, and probably the relative ease that you can modify the characters and the virtual assets. But I think, as Phil says, a lot of the content that you see created is based on the experiences of going around as a tourist almost, and exploring the various different spaces. So it's kind of a place of discovery,
right?
I think, and I think if you can stand the hassle of from the griefers in the kind of the various places that you visit, I guess one of the things that you can say, you know, sort of, I guess one of the things that you can say about it really is that when Second Life was developed, there was a lot of careful thought that went into who owns what content. If you remember, you know, that was a big debate at the time that it was made, and the fact that you own your own content basically means that if you are going to create stuff, you don't have to negotiate it with the you know, with Linden Labs or whatever. You can negotiate it locally with the people that have created the Sims, and that's sort of created this sort of basis for a rich exchange between folks, that has enabled this sort of you know, machinima documentation, if you like, to emerge in vast quantities, about the various kinds of experiences that people have in that world. And I think that's slightly different to how other environments have developed. The fact that it's, you know, this rich aesthetic form, which is unlike anything else pretty much. And, you know, the fact that you can negotiate access to the content with whoever owns it.
Right, that's true. I was curious in looking at the films that all of that we all selected for today's podcast, that it shared several themes, and one of the themes is a documentary like Machinima of a specific installation or a specific event that occurred in Second Life. That reflects your comment just now about how people make films of the activities that are going on in Second Life. And another interesting one is the sort of dance video, the kind of where groups of people get together and do a formal dance, or like a dance ensemble, or just a party where people film the party and people are dancing and things like that. And then a third one that I saw was the sort of, how can I say it, sort of the memoir machinima, where people talk about their individual experience and semi-fictionalize that, like, I did this and now I'm going through this world and here I am and this is my feelings about it and this is what it is. He's sort of sharing their own particular feeling. You don't get any of those forms in any of the other machinima games, like Half-Life 2, certainly Grand Theft Auto. I mean, can you imagine a Grand Theft Auto machinima of an installation? You know, it's just not going to happen. They take elements of the theme of that world and then they make fictionalized films from that. And then the last thing I see as being a recurring form in Second Life is the abstraction, the abstract film. You don't see any of that in any of the other games, with some exceptions, but mostly not, because all of the games are realistic. They depict realistic places, realistic worlds, oftentimes poetically realistic, but realistic nonetheless. Whereas in Second Life Machinima, there's a more artistic sensibility towards it, meaning that they're willing to abstract their experiences because there are literally places in Second Life that are abstracted already. You know, it's an abstracted world. And I find that fascinating. Do you guys see those forms in Second Life, or am I off the mark?
No, I think you're right. Because I remember when we were doing the Machinima Expo, anytime a film was submitted from Second Life, it was more likely to be an abstract film than a narrative film. I think that's because the platform Second Life is really suited for that. And I think Movie Storm and iClone offer, because they offer the same kind of creativity in being able to basically do whatever you like, bring in your own content. You get some of those kind of abstract elements, but like you said, games aren't designed for that. So that's why you very rarely see it in a game, but you'll see it in something like Second Life, which encourages people to be more creative.
That's right.
I think it's to do with that rich aesthetic of it, which you don't, you know, the fact that you can modify it and do stuff with that aesthetic. I think that's partly why you see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was reflecting on this earlier as well, and I was thinking, you know, the one thing you don't actually see too much of is the in-joke type film.
Ah, that's right.
You don't see a lot of, you know, poking fun at each other in a comedic way that you used to see in the early machinima films that were more game-based.
Yeah,
it's
you're right.
all serious stuff, and it's largely all replicating something else. So this connection to real life is, I think, incredibly evident in most of the stuff that you see, even though of course it isn't a mirror world or anything like that, because the physics is completely, well, designed to be a little different. It's not completely different, but it's a little different. But it's all trying to replicate real life stuff, which I have always found bizarre.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Yes, that's right.
So your comment about dance videos and all that sort of stuff, I just think, really, it's just why not just go to a disco or something? Is that even a common parlance term these days?
Yeah,
disco, nightclub or whatever. But
one thing I do like about Second Life is it tends to have more involvement with women in creating machinima than many other machinimas, partly because the stories in many games are male-oriented stories, and the women tend to have sort of stock roles in those games. Whereas Second Life, you can have an entire area that's been created by a woman or groups of women, and they want to get involved in the aesthetic and the creative experience, just like the men do. So I think I like the fact that in Second Life, you see more work by women than you do in other types of machinima.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I've seen as well is it's described really as a 3D virtual chat and economy system, rather than a creative platform. Although we obviously have always focused on the sort of creative side of it, that folks don't really go in there, generally speaking, to create. They go in there to socialize, don't they? Which is kind of interesting. I mean, just thinking about some of your comments there as well, I was kind of reflecting that, and it's evident in some of the films that we're going to be talking about as well. There is this kind of connection, I think, to people living out something beyond what they are capable of living in at the moment in their physical world. And I think over the years that I've sort of seen Second Life films, I've seen a lot of stuff where people have gone in because they've been in accidents, or
they're handicapped
in some way, or they've got cancer, or some other kind of serious problem that has a major impact on their physical life, and they've gone into this virtual space, sometimes with the trace of that evident in what they portray, but very often to do something that they cannot or any longer do in their real life.
Right.
And we've seen quite a few films explore that beyond what is real kind of thing, I think. And when we talk about some of the films later, I've got some comments on that as well, because I do think that comes through in quite a lot of what we look at today. But if you were going to make a horse opera or a space drama or a car chase, you just wouldn't do it in Second Life, would you?
You could if you wanted to, because all the materials are there, but generally it's not what most people do.
Yeah, it's a different mindset, I think, going into this one.
I have one last question before we launch into the films, and it's for you, Phil. Phil and I worked intensely in Second Life for several years, producing a Machinima film festival called the Machinima Expo. And during that time, we encountered the worst and the best of what Second Life had to offer. I wanted to ask you, Phil, what did you think of that experience of producing and creating in Second Life?
Well worth the trouble. In no regrets about it whatsoever. I mean, there were times when It was frustrating. I remember a particular time when you were trying to interview one of the filmmakers who had been, I think, given some kind of a jury award, and you were trying to conduct an interview with the reverence, let's say, and sincerity that you do, and then someone came up and was interfering, and I think borderline pornographic in the way that they were interfering. But those moments, that's not what I remember. I mean, I remember those, so we laugh about them, but what I recollect about the experience is just that was really my first opportunity to actually do some of this, complete blank slate, build whatever. And we did some tributes to Peter Rasmussen's work.
Right.
There was an area where we showcased some of Tom Jantel's work, I believe, and so his aesthetic tends very much toward the surreal. And Lainey Voom, who we'll be talking about one of her films later, one of the years we actually kind of commissioned her to oversee almost all of the design, and oh my goodness, just extraordinary.
I remember
to think that the tools that you build with in there are, you start by working with primitives, really, squares and spheres and things like that, and then you can shape those and morph them and cut them up, and you'd never know it from looking at the result, though. It's just extraordinary. And I can't think of any other platform. Even Damien, you mentioned iClone and Unreal, like those, but all of those, really, those modern platforms, they're fairly dependent for most people on content created by someone else, like in a content store kind of scenario. For characters, for props, for things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's very, very time efficient to have that resource. And Second Life has a content store, so to speak. There are creators who design things, and you can purchase them with Linden dollars and save yourself a ton of trouble, or leverage an expertise that you just don't have. I can't design a ballroom gown from the 1800s, but there's somebody in there who does, who does it amazingly. So, all fond memories of that. And I still feel the same way about Second Life, in terms of, even with as much as we saw creators do there, it's still largely untapped. Like it has not been taken to its fullest potential yet. There's so much potential there when you've got blank slate, competent design tools, and the only limit's your imagination, really. That's extraordinary. And the only thing amazing about Second Life is that someone else hasn't come along and done something comparable yet. There's nothing on that level yet.
And
I'm not sure why.
Your comments are exactly my feelings and thoughts as well. However, one thing bothered me quite a bit, and that was the lag in events. And I found it, and it's partially the reason is that it's that Second Life streams all the data to the user live, and it doesn't do a lot of caching of recurring events or recurring elements of it. And I was curious to find out that in January of 2021, Linden Labs completed the migration of all of its services and databases to AWS servers, which are Amazon-based servers.
Right.
And so if anybody is listening and they're an active Second Life user or creator or machinima film creator, has there been a difference since January 2021 in the streaming and lag in your experience of Second Life? Because those servers at Amazon are just fantastic. So that might be a big difference that we just, since we haven't been there, we don't know about it. Let us know about that if you.
I'm very curious too, Ricky, about, if you remember how we kind of pushed it to to the max of what you can do
Yeah.
in there in terms of
Yeah, yeah.
streaming reels of video and interacting with audio and stuff like that. And the video was there's a lot of work to set that up. And then even then, it wasn't tremendously reliable. It was all QuickTime formats, which are beautiful, but they never have been the cutting edge of streaming. And you figure this was what, 2008, 2009 were the main years where we really went all out in there. YouTube at that point was only what, 3 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Netflix was still mailing DVDs.
Yep.
Streaming video has come a long way in this past decade. So I'd be curious, is any of that improvement to delivering video in high quality? Has Second Life been able to leverage any of that for those, let's say, extra media services? Because for us personally, that was a big part of the attraction, is that we could also do that.
Damien, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, not just the streaming video, but the number of people that would come to the expo as well. When we started getting 100 or 200 people trying to watch, you just couldn't move because the lag was impossible. So wherever you were stuck there, and you just had to enjoy the expo from that point, because you just couldn't walk around, you couldn't move the camera, because the server just wasn't really designed to hold that many people in one spot at the same time. So I hope that's been improved since then. Yeah, but that's something that came to mind as well.
I would think they'd have to, because since COVID, there have been a lot of companies and educational institutions that have gone to Second Life for virtual learning or virtual meetings. So I'd think since they could see that as a way of making profit, they would put more research into making sure that was a good experience.
I would think so too. Yeah. Maybe we need to pop back in there, Ricky.
Oh my!
I think I've still got my account.
Maybe we should run one of our shows from in there.
Yes, maybe. I was thinking that too. Well, listen, we've been jabbering on. Let's get to our films. That's our favorite thing. I'd like to start out with my selections. I have 2 selections and then a couple little mentions. The first one is a film called The Portrait of a Virtual Art Collector, Joseph K. by Preben Wolf. And it's a form that I was talking about earlier called the personal essay or a documentary of a Second Life art collector whose passion for virtual art led him to open a gallery. Much of the film consists of the narrator, Joseph K., interesting echo to Franz Kafka's K., walking through his art gallery and talking about how he became a Second Life art collector. Lots and lots of art is shown along with the credits for each piece. There's sort of club music that goes through that, which I thought was pretty cool initially, but after a while it becomes such a bit wearing. I found it a fascinating piece, and it's a kind of thing that I think could only be shot in Second Life. What did you guys think of it?
I felt like it was a very personal film for the director, because he's showing off his own personal collection, which he's obviously spent quite a long time building this art gallery and filling it up with bits of artwork that he's found throughout Second Life. And obviously he wants to share that with people, so he made this video of him walking around. He talks about how he got into it, like you said, and he talks about some of his favorite pieces. And yeah, I think that's something that's very unique to Second Life, because you couldn't do that in any other. You can do it in any game because you don't buy other people's artwork in game.
Right.
It's in the game, and you wouldn't do it in something like iClone because you can't really share that virtual environment with anyone. It's just your video. So that is something that I think can only ever be made in a platform like Second Life.
Yeah, very unique.
Yeah.
Well, from my perspective, I mean, listening to some of the comments that he made. So this is a story about a guy who calls himself Joseph K, but his real name, I think, is Preben Wolf, and he's been this virtual art collector for 5 years, just 5 years, and he's accumulated this vast collection. But I think what struck me about it, is that it's a gallery full of static objects, which I think is really quite interesting, because it's you know, to my point earlier, really, it's a replica of a real life gallery with very little attention paid to the interactive nature of digital objects. And the art displayed or presented in this video doesn't represent the nature of the virtual beyond being a collection of digital things. And I think what Preben Wolf does explain is that the laws of physics are played with a little bit. Well, he says in the artworks, but I don't think he means in the artworks. I think what he's talking about is in their presentation rather than their content. So they float, or you can walk through them, that kind of thing. And I think it's when he starts talking about how the art can be interactive that this collection actually becomes more interesting. But I think the film is really, you know, it just presents a collection of dead stuff, representational things. And there's another interesting point that he makes, which I'd like to pick up on as well, which is that he reflects on one particular artist that we probably all have heard of or have met at some point or another in our tours through Second Life, and that's Save Me O. But again, what he's collected and what he presented are the pieces that the artist used in the installations, rather than the performance which they were used to create, which is it's a bit odd, I think.
Interesting.
Now, you know, for those of you that don't know, Save Me O's interventions in Second Life were really meant to disrupt both the sort of social conventions in the environment and also the shared rules which are replicated in Second Life. And her work primarily poses, I think a couple of fascinating questions, really, which is, you know, all around, why do people feel it necessary to behave as if they are in real life instead of, you know, acting out their full creative potential? And I think it is an interesting question, and it's one that I don't fully understand as to why, even though Preben acknowledges that as an interesting area, it's not actually portrayed in this video either. Now, then you've got to ask yourself, what is this machinima really about? And it's not really about the collection at all, in my view. It's about the artist. The curator, Preben himself. And what he's trying to portray, in my view, is this kind of throwback to the 1970s of this kind of person who's a philanthropic character that lives for the pursuit of the object, then secretes himself into this stuff, and one can imagine kind of periodically holding cocktail parties to show it all off. Kind of Yahweh's richer in cultural terms than you, so to speak. And there's some hidden things within it which are also a little bit intriguing, which are to do with what he's collected and the aesthetic of what he's collected. He's clearly fascinated by the female form, and also surrealism and abstract images. But none of that about him is actually well captured in that video. And I think I would encourage them to sort of do a little bit more around, if you're going to do this kind of style of thing, capture the essence of who the actual characters are as well.
Right.
Because for me, it's a little bit flat on that.
I see.
And to that point, really, I guess it raises another question, which is, if you are the creator of content that are bought by such as Preben, then wouldn't you want to ask yourself, for whom is this stuff being created, and how are they going to use it, and why? And I didn't get a sense of any of that in this documentary about this gallery at all. So some quite deep thoughts there, but it's
so you wanted him to do more with his essay than just a walkthrough and a brag about his stuff.
Absolutely. I think there's a story there that is not told, and kind of I was curious to know more about what that story was.
Got it. Phil, what did you think?
Yeah, I had a very different experience with it. I found that my analytical faculties shut down, and I just went on a walk with this guy through this art gallery, realizing as I was doing it, I haven't had an opportunity to do that in real life, and I cannot remember how long. Just one of those where you just walk through. I don't say anything to anybody. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to say, oh, what do you see in this? That's like the most annoying thing in the world for me. I just want to go and just stare and immerse and experience. And I found that I did that. And you could give me a pop quiz right now on what he talked about. I would fail. I didn't pay any attention. I didn't have it muted, but it just zoned out for me because I was just entranced by this art. And mind you, it's not because necessarily the art was all pleasant to look at or enjoyable. Some of it was positively horrifying, but that's good art, you know? So I had just a kind of a vicarious experience of just walking it with them. And it probably would have been the same if I had toured it with Joseph K. and he was yapping the whole time. I would have just tuned him out completely and just been, you know, slack-jawed looking at all this art that, you know, I think because we've talked about this many times before, but even before this show existed, that when we would review abstract works with the Expo, for example, and I would confess that, man, that is just not a fountain that springs from me, you know, or it's not anything I've ever learned how to harness, that abstraction in art. So as a result, I'm just entranced by it. I'm fascinated by it. I don't claim to understand it. I would make a horrible art critic because I don't even know how to talk about it other than it did something to me emotionally. And yeah, I just find that, I mean, I'm a now 50-year-old father of 2 teenagers working most weeks, 7 days a week, repairing and computers and managing networks. And I'm sorry, tours of art galleries are just not part of my lifestyle. Not to mention, I'm in a part of the country where there isn't one nearby at all. So I was just fascinated and grateful for the experience. So yeah, I don't know how helpful that is. I don't know how to.
It's very.
I don't know how to review it as a film.
Yeah.
Other than it just did something I didn't expect to me, and I'm grateful for it.
Wow, what great comments, you guys! Thank you. I don't think we often get this range of comments on a lot of films that we review here. So I'm really happy that this film brought up a lot of thinking and feelings. I wanted to quickly go on to my second pick, which is Purda Park's Future Shock Machinima series documentary. Purda Park is a machinima filmmaker, and she shares her workflow on how she creates machinima. It's more of a practical, almost tutorial-like machinima. I chose it because of its informational content, and it's a fun way to learn about machinima and Second Life, and as a contrast to the Portrait of a Virtual Art Collector. What did you guys think of the Purda Park's Future Shock Machinima series documentary?
I think that the world needs more videos like this. The artist process videos. It is so valuable. And if you think about in a time before there was the internet, this is the hoarded knowledge that you had to know somebody who knew somebody to ever get exposed to. And so I just love it when somebody who makes stuff shows how they make it. I think it's just delightful. I don't really have any specific comments on this film other than it's a great example of that type of knowledge sharing, and I love it. I think it inspires people. It sends a message. You could do this. You could do this. You know, I think the same things happened in the food industry, if you will, with all the videos that are online about how to prepare this, how to cook this and whatnot. A lot of people that have time to do that in their lives, they're inspired by that. It makes it accessible. It makes it feel like, wow, maybe I could do this too. This is exactly the same kind of thing. And it's wonderful. And I wish that more people did this for various engines.
Yeah,
that's great.
It was nice to see the behind the scenes of how she made this series. It made me want to watch the series, which I haven't had a chance to.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah,
one of the things one of the bits that stood out to me in this film was there's a moment where she's got her Second Life character sitting at a computer as if her Second Life character is making the series on the computer. I thought that's behind the scenes in the world. I thought that was a nice little touch there that made me smile.
That's good. Tracy?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think this is a series by Draxter Dupre, isn't it? And Drax does a great, he has a whole series of stuff where he goes out and talks to people that have created stuff, whether it's Sims or films or whatever. And he originally was commissioned by Second Life to do that, and he's continued to do it for years and years and years and years. And his stuff is really brilliant, really insightful. And this is just another example of the quality of the stuff that he does for Second Life, basically.
Yeah, we'll make sure we put a link into Drax stuff, because you're right. He's done some really wonderful things about exploring art. Another example of that machinima, in which you are going through this world and encountering people and then sharing their experience with other people. It's a real social aspect of Second Life, which I think is unique. Lastly, I wanted to mention that there was a really interesting video that I caught, and it was a Half-Life 2 level that had been moved to the Unreal Engine. And it was sort of a demo of walking through a specific engine. And I found that absolutely brilliant. The graphics taken from that original Half-Life 2 game was just really marvelous. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's worth a look. I thought that was really cool. Damien, I wanted to...
a listen.
And a listen,
worth a listen. The music is just delicious.
Yeah, the music is fantastic.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Damien, let's go to your choice. What was your choice this month?
My choice, well, you challenged me to try and find something Star Wars, and I couldn't find anything Star Wars that I particularly liked, but I came across this instead, which is in 2020, there was a comic book convention or sci-fi convention held within Second Life. And I was very intrigued by this because I thought I missed going to this because it obviously happened in the past. And my initial thought was, well, these are some clever people, because they thought, well, all the real life Comic Cons have been cancelled. I love going to Comic Cons myself. I like getting in a costume and meeting my friends and having a good time there. And obviously that wasn't possible that year. And I thought, well, I could have gone to this if I know it's happening, and kind of had a virtual experience that I was missing being able to go to. So this video kind of shows off the environments that they built for the convention to take place in, and there's all these different themes for different aspects of science fiction. Like there's the Enterprise in one part, there's the London Bridge, which had recently been featured in the battle in the Spider-Man film that had come out shortly before. There's Doctor Who references, there's Star Wars references, there's all kinds of stuff in there. And I think the idea is you could dress up your avatar the way you want to, as if you were really dressing up in costume, and you could go and take screenshots of your character in these different places and meet new friends. The same kind of stuff you would do at a real comic convention. So I started looking at into sort of the behind the scenes of how this event took place, and it wasn't done because of COVID. They'd been actually running it for many years before. And it's just, that's what my initial reaction was, that, but I was mistaken, and I was really glad to see that. And they'd done one the year after, and of course I missed that one because I only just found the video. And then this morning I checked, and they've actually announced the dates for this year's event, which I think I'm going to go in and have to check out. And I'm going to mention the dates now, in case anyone is curious. It's May the 18th to the 29th. They've only just announced that. I don't know what kind of content they're going to have. I imagine it's going to be very similar to this video, but I guess I have to go and have a look. So what did you guys think of the video itself?
I was a little frustrated with it because of a couple things. One is that they use this sort of epic choral music, the kind you hear in Game of Thrones and other things, which was mismatched. It didn't seem to match the science fiction theme. I ended up having to turn the music off to watch it. And I also had some trouble because it depicted a lot of people just walking around and dancing at some point. I didn't get the feeling that it covered a lot of the actual events that took place there. So it wasn't a very appealing film for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I wondered if it had been filmed either before the event or afterwards, because yeah, it did look like it wasn't done during. There just wasn't enough avatars present for it to have been active, and maybe the lag problem isn't solved, and that's why they didn't even attempt it during the event.
Good point.
That could be it.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I said that could be it.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't terribly jazzed by it until it got to the scene where the kind of voluptuous woman with wings and a tail starts seductively twerking to the Mad Hatter sitting on a sofa that looks like it's made from the bucket seat of an old automobile. And I was like, all right, I'm engaged now. Because if that's what goes on at this con, then that's awesome.
You're ready to roll. Yeah.
I'm ready to roll. Yeah.
A lap dance.
I want to know more about that. How did that happen? Who is that guy? And why did he deserve that kind of hello?
Tracy?
I thought it was really intriguing, actually, because when I was reading up a little bit about it as well, Damien, it's created by lots of folks put parts of the sim into it, so they all contribute the installations, and the installations are all these sci-fi cultural classic references that you kind of describe. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, Back to the Future. There's a bit of Jurassic Park in it, a bit of Blade Runner, a bit of Mad Max Thunderdome, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Avatar, Dune, Star Wars. It just went on and on. I mean, it was a phenomenal collection of installations. And, you just kind of wonder what would you do in each of those installations other than kind of walk through. So whilst I get where Ricky was coming from in terms of, you didn't actually see what the experiences were, I think that was it. The experience was the fact that it was a detailed sim of a set in one of those kind of classic films. But the other sort of, I mean, so this is where it kind of, for me, just wasn't a bit of a mismatch, because what it said is it described it as a con that covers sci-fi and all its subgenres like horror and steampunk and post-apocalypse and cyberpunk and all of that, superheroes and whatnot. But then it said it aims to celebrate the possibilities of the future, which is where I got, really? But I think really what it's doing is just celebrating cultural references to mediatized iconic experiences. And then the other sort of subtext to it is it's all done to raise money for the American Cancer Society's relay as well. So there's another reason for it to kind of take place. But I guess the only thing that happens there is folks meet up in these sims, just have a little walk around and then have a bit of a party. And that is what the video is, just a quick run through of what these sims were and aren't they amazing, and the party.
So you don't think there were any events that in which there was an installation, or that there was a person giving a talk about some aspect of science fiction, or a series of science fiction artworks, or anything that was interactive in it? And it was just a party film with a bunch of models of sets?
I suspect that's what it is.
Well, if that was the case, then they captured it really well.
Convention, huh?
Yeah.
But you know what? That to that point, really, if there isn't stuff like that in there, then there's a real opportunity, because it is a really interesting place to go and have a look around. The fact that you've got all these installations, and they change every year according to the description. I mean, I read it's been running for 13 years. This will be its 14th year, I think.
Yeah. Well, I compared it to my own experiences going to science fiction conventions, and there was much more interaction in live conventions. And you made the point earlier about how you were disappointed in the portrait gallery because there was a lack of interaction, that it was just static images. And I kind of thought that was the problem with this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't disagree, Ricky. But clearly done.
I don't know. I got tired of watching that lady with the wings do her little G-string dance, and the
yeah, it might as well have been "Oh Fortuna." Huh?
Yeah, give me a break. Jesus, Phil, you have got some fantastic films to share with us today. Tell us about them.
Yeah, I'll lead off. We mentioned Lainey Voom earlier. She created what, to me, okay, so when you asked us, Ricky, hey, let's all pick Second Life stuff, I did survey more recently created stuff, because this film that I ended up picking is from, I think, 2008. Goes way back. To me, this is still the most impressive piece of animated video to come out of Second Life, and maybe one of the most impressive pieces of machinima ever made. It's called Push. It's about a 2-minute film. Lainey Voom, who I've interacted with in Second Life back then, but know very little about her real world persona. I don't even know her real world name. I tried reaching out to her about a week ago when I made the pick through her Vimeo account. She may not even have that email address anymore. Who knows? But haven't heard from her. So she's a mystery to me as a person. But then this film is just extraordinary. The amount of, first of all, I would venture a guess that if we were to put this film in front of, a set of random people who had similar levels of knowledge that we do about the aesthetics of the different real-time engines and games and all that, and had them guess what was this made with, I would venture a guess that the vast majority of people would get it wrong, because this doesn't look anything like anything. It doesn't look like Second Life. And yet it is fully, like, not enhanced one bit. Every bit of footage is exactly what she captured from there. She made this in a week, kind of on a dare to herself of what would happen if I did this. She gave herself a $50 budget for custom content to buy maybe costumes or props or things like that within Second Life, and gave herself 1 week start to finish. And this was the result. And it's just astonishingly good. The texturing of everything is so rich. There's not a solid color anywhere. The animations are so odd and unusual, and even though I don't know if she could tell us exactly what this film is about or what its message was necessarily, there is a sense of theme that comes through, and it doesn't have to be pinned down, I think, to enjoy it. So yeah, I think this is one of the not to be all superlative about it, but this is one of the greatest of all time for me. And I'm very glad that we did this. I don't know that I would have thought to revisit this film if we hadn't done the Second Life focus. And it's amazing and inspiring. And Lainey, if you tune into this, I'm doing the Wayne's World thing. Not worthy. Amazing, amazing stuff. What did you guys think?
It's one of those films where you watch it, you have no idea how they made it in the platform that they chose. I also remember, I started watching, I remember when we got this for the Machinima Expo, it was one of the, I think, did we get a jury prize? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure we did
win the jury prize that year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I remembered it from then. And so, yeah, it was nice to see it again. But yeah, even looking at it again now, I thought, I would struggle with how to make this in iClone, which obviously has a lot more power behind what you can do with the actual animation. So I have no idea how she managed to pull this off in Second Life. And that's a testament to her skill level at using
it holds platform. Up so well.
Yeah,
it really does.
I was going to say exactly the same, Phil. To me, it stood the test of time, and it was highly experimental when it came out. It was actually July 2009, I think.
Okay.
And I remember showcasing the piece at countless film and animation festivals that I was invited to speak at during the period between 2009 2012. It was one I showed, always one I showed. And I also included it in paper I did on Manifesto for Machinima, which was published in 2011. And I think what makes it really so compelling is that, the music piece, this solo drum piece.
Yes.
Which kind of really, it kind of captures the increasingly demented nature of the aesthetic that it's portraying.
Yeah.
And it kind of uses these surrealist visuals to illustrate. And I've always associated it with time, but actually I don't think it's about time. I think it's about death. And
Me too. Exactly what I think.
Fast time passes for us humans. And maybe how time appears to speed up as we get older, Phil?
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
I mean, it was your pick.
Once you're 50, every film about time is about death, isn't it?
Yeah, I felt that the theme was death as well, but it wasn't apparent to me until this most recent viewing of the film. I didn't think that when it first came out. I can't agree with you more. I mean, it's just, you're so right, Phil, about this. It's such a great choice. It's a brilliant film, and it's about itself. I mean, it's so unique. You can't compare it to anything else.
Yep.
One thing I do wanted to point out is that Second Life has a kind of, at times, Second Life has an uncanny quality in its look of the avatars. I remember once asking Hugh Hancock during the big period where Second Life was on everybody's tongue in Machinima. I asked him, well, what did he think of Second Life? And he said he just wasn't interested in it. And I asked him why, and he says he didn't like the look of the characters. He said they just seemed fake to him, And in some sense, I don't personally think that, but I see what he's talking about. And I think in Push, Lainey uses that sort of uncanny quality of the characters and their limited animation sets, because there isn't a lot of subtle animation in Second Life, And I think she used it in a way with that rat-a-tat modern dance drum music in such a way as that she put them all together so that they all worked. Part of what
she made it a strength. Yeah.
Yes,
what some might see as a weakness, she leaned into it.
Yeah.
Beautifully.
Yeah. And I think in many ways, that's what artists do. They often take disparate elements and put them together in a unique way so that it creates a believable sort of fictional world or universe. And that is such a tribute to her talent as a filmmaker. Great choice, Phil. Great choice.
There is one more thing I'll say about this. This was
sure.
So its creator was a lady called Trace Sanderson, and she disappeared from the machinima scene many years ago. And I know several people that have tried to contact her over the years, but she's just never been heard of since about 2012-ish, I think.
Wow.
So kind of long gone. We don't know what the backstory is there.
Well,
nobody ever actually spoke to her in person either. That was always the interesting.
She was very private. Yeah, yeah.
I remember walking through the exhibit that we made on the Machinima Expo, because we had this wonderful exhibit in which you could go up to various stations and then play that particular film. And I remember walking through it with her to get notes and things like that. And she was a very interesting person, but you're right, private. She didn't share any information about herself or any of that. Let's go to your second film, Soul Chambers by Chantal Harvey. Phil, tell us about it.
Yeah, this is if there's someone in Second Life with what we could call the opposite of that personality, it would be Chantal. She's not afraid to talk to anybody. Not that Trace was afraid, but I'm just saying her approach is more, let's talk. And she's kind of a leader figure in that community, I think. I mean, she's highly respected, well-known, and has been at it for a long time. And I just happened to, while I was in there, having just watched Lainey's Push, I just surfed a little bit around Vimeo because it'd been a while since I've been in there for other Second Life stuff. And this piece that Chantal had recently posted or reposted, but it was made quite a few years ago, just really caught my eye as something that really, it's more Second Life-y, if you will. Like, this is in Second Life,
right?
But it's just beautiful and abstract. And I don't normally go for abstract, mainly because I'm hesitant to pick them because I don't know how to talk about them properly. And that's still the case with this. The film is called Soul Chambers. And yeah, I guess it falls into the category of kind of a tour of a sim, so to speak, of showing off something that's been created there. Maybe Push, primed my buttons or something to where I was in the perfect mood for that. But I just really enjoyed it for what it was, just this very, very colorful and lively and beautiful thing. Maybe you guys have something more intelligent to say about it than I'm mustering up.
Stop that. You're doing fine.
You want me to say a few things on it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not that my stuff's terribly intelligent. Okay, so it's an art installation, and it's actually by a French artist. Ultraviolet was a French artist, and Chantal filmed it in 2011, and this installation was created for the Burn 2 event, and Chantal had gone into this installation and was so kind of wowed by it. She filmed it, and what because I asked her about this one, and what she sort of said about it is it hit her to be so what she imagined life after death to be. She couldn't really explain it, so she filmed it. She contacted Ultraviolet and sent her the footage that she'd created. And Chantal says she was incredibly moved by the piece when she was in it. Anyway, what then happened was Ultraviolet composed a piece of music to the film that she'd made and sent the text to it and what have you. And so really what this is an actual, it's an experience and also a collaboration between Ultraviolet and Chantal.
Oh, wow.
To sort of extend this, I suppose really what you'd call it is a kind of a serendipitous creative experience between the two of them. So which I think is
extraordinary.
It's really beautiful. It's a really lovely piece. And I can actually see what she was saying, or I get what she was saying about it being sort of life after death. Kind of really agree with Chantal on it, really, because that's how it came over when I was sort of looking at this piece, even though what you're experiencing is the film and not the actual installation, because I dare say the installation's long gone. And I think it's one of those things, but back to the point that we were talking about really at the beginning of today's show, is that this is an example, I think, of Second Life being this kind of vicarious enactment of some aspect of life that can't be lived any longer in real life for whatever reason. And over the years, I think I have seen numerous machinimas play with this idea of something, passing over, if you like, into Second Life. And I think that's what comes through in this one, for whatever reason. And I was kind of thinking, what's intriguing about this is, so, Second Life has often been aligned to the metaverse concept, has it not? Stevenson's Snow Crash metaverse concept. And what's kind of interesting here is this installation and this film and experience was filmed years before the book that he's just most recently published, which is called Fall, which is all about uploading your life to the net. And that's what this is about. This is about, passing over into this sort of virtual space. That's what the kind of installation seems to be about to me. And I guess you have to kind of think, where would Stevenson get the inspiration for some of the ideas that he comes up with? And I'm wondering if this might be some of the ideas behind it, because let's face it, none of the organizations that are kind of playing around with this idea of uploading your brain post death to the net are actually ever going to get there, despite what the hype is all about. But Second Life seems to have captured something a little bit of it, I think, in what's it leaves behind in this metaverse environment, if it has any persistence beyond whatever the moment in time is that it was filmed. And I think that's kind of what's interesting. This has a bit more to it than just the film.
Oh, interesting. I want not to be morbid, but last year, one of the things I did is I bought a cremation service for myself for after I die, so that the process of taking care of my body and all of that will be taken care of, and will be away from the responsibility of my friends and my partner. I also set up a whole series of a will and all of that stuff. And it occurred to me that while you were talking, that perhaps I should buy some sort of space in Second Life where I can be an avatar that appears long after I'm dead to say, hey, you guys, I was Ricky Grove and I did this and I did that. It'd be kind of fun. Thank you for suggesting that.
Oh, I'm sure we look forward to that one, Ricky.
Yes. Oh, by the way, about the film, one of the things I loved a lot was the poem as narration. That's a wonderful idea. Go ahead, Damien.
I was going to say, hopefully that's not for a long time, Ricky.
Yeah, hopefully.
As my thoughts on the film was, I'm really glad, Tracy, you explained all that, because I watched it and I didn't really get it. It was stunning to look at, but I didn't quite grasp that it was the life after death kind of concept. So now you explain that, I get it more. I understand it more now. So the visuals now make more sense to me with the poem and everything. So yeah, thank you for that.
A lot of times abstract works, I still do, I'm attracted to abstract works, and I studied a lot of the post-World War II abstract film movement, club movement, films by Maya Deren and Stan Brakhage and others. And one of the things about them is that they're not meant to be consumable in the same way as mainstream films are, in which you consume it and you understand it immediately with one viewing. They're meant to be gone back to and repeatedly viewed, because they deal with something called ambiguity, where you can define and explain certain aspects of the film in a variety of ways, whereas there's no ambiguity in, say, the TV series Law and Order. Exactly what you see on the screen is what it is. But much of abstract film is representational. I mean, they show symbols of things and that imply other things. And that's one of the things I liked about it, is that it was an abstract film like this. It really rewards multiple viewings, is what I'm trying to say.
There was a kind of a philosophical trend that I want to say emerged in the late 1800s, early 1900s, post Nietzsche. And I think Wittgenstein wrote a lot on this, but basically the idea was, when a reader is presented a text, that's an interactive experience, that actually it's not complete until the reader ends up bringing something to it and changes it. And that gets a little, fluffy there in terms of how abstract that is. But it changed the way that I think about reading ever since that I studied that. And I think that the same is very much true for music and for visuals, for things like this, and for abstract works in particular. They leave that space there for that dance, if you will, to happen. And I mean, even I, who am not studied in it, I get that. Like I feel it, and it can be really special and sometimes confusing. If your brain doesn't at all know what to do, then it's very weird and very unique experience. So,
and Second Life encourages this sort of type of work, unlike any other game engine or real-time engine that is out there.
I agree.
Tracy, let's go to your interesting choices. What do you have for us today?
Well, I've got a couple and an honourable mention, if you'll allow me.
Okay.
The first one is an historical piece. It's actually a history of Second Life by a lady called Bolly Coco.
What a great name.
Great name, absolutely. Released in February 2021. And it's really just a potted history documentary by a French resident in Second Life, who's really only been resident for a few years, 4 years from what I can gather. And the film itself is just a run-through review of some of the Second Life history notables from its earliest days. So key events, major developments, and that sort of thing in terms of the environment itself. What she's done quite a lot of work in the background, obviously. She's visited these historical places she reports on in her search for 17 years of existence of Second Life. So she's looking for the residue of that.
Yeah.
She's reviewed areas such as all these historical areas, hundreds of note cards, apparently from Oslinden, the Second Life wiki, the Second Life community page, the fandom Second Life page, and various blogs, including superfan Wagner James Hour, who we've talked about in the past. And needless to say, she's reporting on something of the history, which frankly is all about how creators have developed the world. But the challenge I think she's faced is that it's never going to cut the mustard for all the fans of Second Life. So I think she's been given a bit of a rough deal in the comments, basically, which are along the lines of, hey, you missed this or you missed that. And, I think she's done a pretty good job in terms of documenting or, putting a bit of a marker down for key stuff that's happened. And I think if you want to understand how Second Life has evolved as a kind of, if you want to call it a metaverse, then call it a metaverse. She's kind of put a bit of a marker on the key steps that have taken place to get it to the point that it is at now. So it's a backstory more than anything. It's a bit of a documentary It's by no means a complete history, but it's not a bad effort, I think.
Yeah, I learned a lot about Second Life that I didn't know in it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed her presentation. Obviously, she did a lot of work in trying to put together all sorts of disparate information, and that's not an easy job. I would caution those critics who say you missed this, you missed that, to take on this job themselves to see what they would come up with, because I assure you that they would post the video and many other people would say, well, you missed this, you missed that, you know. My only problem with the video is that I wish she would have spent a little more time on the presentation of it. I think her focus was so much on trying to get the information and get images that that's what she excelled in. But sometimes the repeated gestures and the bad lip sync at times, the lack of attention to detail on that area distracted me a bit. But I would just look away from the screen and listen to what she had to say, and it wasn't a problem. But I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was really good. And if you want to know about Second Life, you couldn't do better than this particular documentary.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. I think that, yeah, anybody who would, criticize her approach to history doesn't, I would argue they don't understand what the work of history actually is, because it is always making decisions about what's important enough to write about and what's not.
Yeah.
That goes back to, that's always been history. The kind of tongue-in-cheek phrase that people use, that the winners are who write history. Well, I mean, that's a kind of jaded way of looking at it, but the truth is that's always the job of history.
Selective.
You don't document everything.
Yeah.
So I would say, though, if I had created something historical and someone said you left some stuff out, I would take it as a compliment, because that's the job. The job is not to document everything. It's to make a selection, and the person doing the job always influences that. So Ricky's right. Every single iteration that someone would create of Second Life's history is going to choose this and not that, and vice versa. So I don't see that as a weakness of it at all. I found it very informative too. There's a lot in it that I didn't know about prior to this. The lip sync bothered me a little bit too, which is ironic, I realize, coming from someone who cut their teeth in Machinima in Quake, where there was either no lip sync or it was some kind of a primitive skin pitching thing to go from 4 phonemes. So, but as I've evolved, I've kind of come to more of a philosophy on that of, maybe de-emphasize, or maybe don't lean so much on that if the engine doesn't do a good job. Because that's the thing. It's not a flaw of her filmmaking that the lip sync was bad. That's not a strength of Second Life. Never has been.
No.
Likely would never will be. Who knows? But sometimes you have to make that decision. She wants a presenter there. I had to do something very similar with my recently released Obit. The lip sync is not perfect, but because of a limitation of the tool I was using. But the way to mitigate that is just maybe not linger on it or rely on it quite so much. But with the style of a video like this, again, there's an MC and she's the one who's presenting it.
Right.
That's tough. Right. You can't have no lip sync. You don't want there to be talking while she's moving her head and not moving her lips at all. So that was a tough choice to have to make to figure out how to do that. But anyway, in terms of content, the underlying historical content of it, I found it very valuable and very enjoyable.
I agree with people who have made what you've been saying about the comments. They're very unforgiving, because if you're going to make a documentary that covers 17 years of history, you're going to have a 17-year-long video.
Yes. That's exactly right.
I am very thankful that we did not get a 17-hour video to look, a 17-year-long video to look at.
Me too.
That would have been
Imagine
terrible.
The download time. Oh God.
But I think documentaries like this for online platforms it's a very good idea, because I learned a lot from it, and obviously you guys all learned a lot from it, and some of this early history could easily be forgotten.
Yeah.
Yes.
Someone could join Second Life and have no idea how it came about, and that's probably true of every online platform, from World of Warcraft to Ultimate Online. I'm just trying to think of other sort of online places, and I think a documentary like this shows you how it came about and some of the important things that happened to get it from when it started to where it is now, because it doesn't just launch and then that's it. They evolve over time. Every single online platform has this evolution. It's not just a static platform where nothing ever changes. And so being able to go back and see, well, what was it like in those early days and why did they change it? I think that's important, and make sure that something like this means that this video hopefully will still exist after Second Life does. So if Second Life disappears, this is a documentary, so this is how it started, and you can look back and, you know, learn about this platform.
Right.
That was.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way about some of the books that were written about machinima in the earlier years. The one that Paul Marino was involved with, Matt Kelland.
Yeah.
You pick those up now and try and use them as a manual for how to make machinima. Even the Machinima for Dummies one that Hugh and Johnny worked on, it's not very useful. But in terms of preserving some history with that, yeah, that's great. I'm so glad that those were published, and for the most part, most of them are still available today.
Yeah.
My
Tracy,
second, yeah,
you've got one last choice there. What was it?
Well, it's Digital Rain, and I don't know if you guys have had a chance to have a look at this. It's a bit of a late pick. So it's called Digital Rain 2021. And what I put the link to is a trailer for it. And it was released on the 13th of January this year by, well, I think it's created by a collective. I'm not really kind of sure what they call themselves as a production house, but the guy that posts on behalf of is called Mac and T's Tomato. Now, the trailer is for an 8-episode series, and they're really up to about episode 6 from what I can gather at the moment. Now, quite interestingly, the episodes are not on YouTube. They're on something called Streamable, which is actually a video editing platform. I don't know if you guys have used it, come across it or whatever. I'm guessing. No, you haven't. Okay.
No.
Oh, I'm surprised at that. Because it looks like it's got some kind of interesting streaming options, but I think it lacks the discoverability that we expect on YouTube. Hence why I think these guys have put an awful lot of emphasis on marketing and developing this as it's what John Gator called as a company. The business around the film, if you like. They've put a huge amount of effort into doing that. But about the film, so it's a Blade Runner-esque style machinima. You know, tons of cyberpunk style references in terms of the characters and the scenery and the story tropes. And I found it interesting because not only is it a machinima series, but they've also developed a comic book and photography alongside it. Actually, this is the group's first machinima project, which I think is interesting. They've built the sets for the first 3 episodes themselves, and they were basically a group of friends collaborating on this to create originally something Matrix-like. But they switched their style as they began creating the first episode. So to me, they've not really got an awful lot of plot, and I think that kind of comes through a little bit as well. Now, there's a pilot episode on there, which is actually a standalone piece. And what they've said is that generated such good feedback from their community of followers that they went on to make this sort of larger series. And in fact, from episode 4, they've been on other creators' sims to create content, because apparently there are a number of cyberpunk sims in Second Life, quite a few of them. Now, I have to say the plot is quite well trodden, but they've put this huge amount of effort into creating all the promotional paraphernalia that they feel kind of goes with the film. But I think really, whilst I do think they've got lots of potential to tell some really interesting original stories through their creative process, but I think at the moment it just feels for me a bit top heavy on the marketing side and thin on the content side. Which is not to say it's not fun to watch, because it is, but I think I would definitely suggest to these guys put a bit more effort into the storyline and, you know, try and work on original story content that I think this world that they've created is kind of capable of. So you've got kind of mixed messages coming through it, I think. But what did you guys think?
I watched the trailer and I watched the first episode, and I didn't realize that they'd built everything themselves for it. I thought it must have been a sim that they found, but I was impressed by the amount of detail that was in the sim. So knowing that they made it specifically for their videos shows a huge amount of work for it, because it's not just it's very easy to make some boxes and put some textures on to make them look futuristic, but they have so much detail on the environment. So they obviously put a lot of work into it. There were some issues with the camera work that kind of bothered me, where it would pass through the walls and things like that. I don't know if that improves later on or not, but I was intrigued enough by what I saw to want to watch more. I just haven't had time to do that yet. So I'm interested to see where it goes, because it's not the kind of story you'd expect to be told within Second Life.
Exactly.
It's expected to be in a game, or I keep saying iClone because, or something along those lines, not Second Life. So I'm intrigued to know why they chose Second Life rather than a platform that is better suited for a story like this. But on the other hand, I also appreciate that they're going to the amount of trouble to do all this in a platform that's not designed for it, because that's makes it a greater challenge. So the fact that they're, you know, going for it is to be admired.
Yeah. Ricky?
I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to watch it, so I can't comment on it, but I do know that there are some really interesting series in Second Life, and I'm glad to see that people are still working in that format, because I think Second Life is a really good way to make series drama or series comedy. I think it's a really good format for that.
Phil?
Yeah, I watched the trailer. It didn't have the same effect on me that it did on Damien, of like, what a trailer should do, I think, of wanting to pull you in, and I think I want to watch more of this. I don't know exactly why that is. I've been reflecting on that. I think I might just be personally a little bit oversaturated with the cyberpunk aesthetic. I feel like I've eaten enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and so that's not a criticism of their work at all. It's just me personally, am just not drawn to that. I do see some signs that there's not the same level of polish that you'd see on Damien's a great example of that he's been at it for so many years, that he's learned the art of cutting around the weaknesses and things like that. Every single platform has, including iClone. There's some transitions in there that just aren't perfect. Well, you just don't dwell on them, look away. Don't make the viewer look away.
Yeah.
You look away, camera, so and that just comes with experience. So I would venture a guess that will get better as they go, if people give them honest criticism, and if they listen to that. So I love the trailer, though, simply because this is such a silly thing to fixate on, but there's this really eerie and haunting cover of very iconic song from The Doors called The End, and it fit the mood of their trailer perfectly. It takes a lot of cojones to even try and cover The Doors.
Yeah.
but this fit, it, I don't know. It reminded me of one of the songs that Hugh had picked for the Bloodspell soundtrack. Has that kind of vocalist on it. Anyway, that was neat. So yeah, that's all I have to say on it.
That's me done. I've got an honorable mention, but I'll save it for the blog, actually.
Okay. So that's our show today. I did want to mention that Second Life is free. You can go to secondlife.com and download it. If you don't know anything about it or how to get involved in it, there's a introductory place that takes you to it so you can learn about the mechanics of it. Second Life has a huge community of people that can help you. There's if you want to make machinima, there's a wonderful Monday night program called Machinima Mondays with Chantal Harvey. You can join that up. It'll give you baby steps into making a film. But given the comments and the film choices we had, once you get the basics down of filming, go out and explore. Find something interesting. Make something that's fun, that's different. Because as you can see, Second Life gives you the opportunity to experience so many unique things. And if you find something that you want to make a film of, then ask permission to do it of whatever sim you're on, and then take off. I'd like to make a quick announcement that we're now doing premieres of our episodes, the Completely Machinima podcast on YouTube. A new episode comes out every Thursday, and we live the premiere that episode at 12 p.m. Pacific time that day. There'll at least be a couple of us there answering questions and chatting about the episode. So come and join us for the premiere. We'll have our podcast at completelyMachinima.com and also this episode on YouTube. I'd also like to announce that next month, April, we're going to be looking at machinima created in Real Illusion's iClone. That should be very exciting. I thank you very much, Tracy, Phil, Damien, for another great film episode. I always enjoy these. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.